Keith Williams, we're here at Gold's Venice in sunny California. Introducing my boy Mike Gritty, who's getting ready for the Kyle and USA's at the light heavyweight class. My trainer Dave Kalick, who's changed my body in the last year to make it what it is now.
I met Keith several years ago through Stan Efferding, his buddy. You know, everybody knows that Keith always had really great potential, but it's very frustrating seeing him taking second and then sixth. And a lot of it had to do with his training. Keith comes from a football background. He's a power athlete. So we needed to get him to feel the weights, not just move the weight from point A to point B.
The feel and the contraction is more important than the weight, because just like when we go through my leg workouts, I'm a football track guy turned to a bodybuilder now, and contracting the muscle and putting the stress in the muscle versus powering through stuff, I wasn't seeing the changes that I wanted to see on my body. But now that they're making me slow everything down, squeeze everything and focus on negative, completely different. And like I said, in the last year, my body's completely changed because of that.
There's a lot of very unique machines here at Gold's Venice, and one of them is this preacher curl. It just has a great feel. You lock into the machine, and the point of getting the benefit out of this machine is to really get a real contraction on the top of the movement. A lot of people just bounce all movements. With this one, we got to get a peak contraction on the top, and we have a very deliberate negative on the way down. Nothing takes the place of good compound movements, but machines do offer us the benefit of really controlling, the negative. It enables us to use different angles. Free weights and everything, we can create our own angles, but with machines, there's set angles, and that has an advantage too.
I'm Mike Gritty from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was a collegiate wrestler, came out of wrestling, did some MMA training, crossed over bodybuilding there. 2010, I won the Minnesota State, did USA's. Had some work to do, had some things I wanted to improve on, so I took a little time off. I also took last year off to do some professional arm wrestling, which was fun.
Interesting thing with Mike Gritty, he's a Minnesota State arm wrestling champion. It's interesting, we noticed when he was training, he's very locked in, he keeps everything very in, so we're trying to get Mike to open up more and expand his movements more, because I guess he has that arm wrestling background just embedded in him in his training style too. So we're trying to get Mike to open up more and get more range of motion. This is a sport of apples and oranges. When you look at Mike Gritty, Keith's training partner, keep in mind Mike is 5'5", and he's about 210 pounds. So his bellies are very shaped differently than Keith's. With Keith, with his long arms, we got to lock in his form a lot better. And Mike's arms grow like weeds, whereas Keith has huge arms, but they're a little bit more stubborn, let's say, than somebody like Mike.
It's like a little ball.
When somebody's talking about arm training, they always ask me, how do you get arms like that and that sort of thing? Well, of course, genetics plays a big role in it. And, my arms have always been a little better than the rest, but they've always grown a little easier than the rest of me, but really capitalizing on things and trying to create shapes and density within there and bring the rest of my body up to match is kind of the goal this year. I train them hard, I isolate them, I always change it up, doing different things, whether it's stretching movements followed by contraction movements. I've tried all sorts of things. I've tried high volume training, I've tried heavy training on them, and as long as I'm changing it up, it seems like they always make the changes with me, so it always goes well.
Anyway, so after the preacher curl, we went on to a seated alternate dumbbell curl. The idea with the alternate dumbbell curl is we're trying to remove the anterior delt from the movement, so we're trying to really avoid a swing. So the arm has to be, your arm is glued to the side, and we get a peak contraction again, and we're getting a slow contraction, resistance on the way down. So the arm has to be glued to the side, and there has to be enough of a swing without raising the arm, which would activate the anterior delt. I think the alternate dumbbell curl, seated, in the unilateral style that we did it, which is one arm at a time, there's nothing like it, especially after a movement like preacher curl. There's just so much blood in the biceps it is to begin with, and now we're really just cramming more blood in there. And they're pretty much baked after this exercise. For arm training, for basically all the body parts, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a large amount of volume in a short period of time. Okay, so basically it's about 45 to 50 minutes for these body parts. And we basically do about 4 pyramid to 5 pyramid exercises per body part, 4 pyramid sets in about a 45 to 50 minute period. So again, we're doing high volume in a short period of time.
Dave works really hard with me. He's always keeping tabs on me. He checks on me about 2 to 3 times a week just to make sure I'm on track, make sure everything's on the up and up. He's really transformed my body in the last 8 months. Creating density. I think it's been about an extra 10 pounds of muscle I feel like I've gained over the course of time here, and and shapes have came out unbelievably. I think it's the best shape I've been in. I can honestly say that it's definitely the best shape I've been in, coming into a show and being about 5.5 weeks out from the Cal State on May 25th, and hopefully moving on from there to USA's in the light heavyweight class and try and make my mark there. I feel pretty good about it. I feel pretty good about my training. In the past year or so, I've really backed off my bicep training there because of the arm wrestling, with the stress it puts on your tendons. I try not to overwork them, that sort of thing. But as far as my triceps, bringing those up, that's a different story. I've been trying to work those more.
Again, we have a peak contraction on the top of the movement, and we have an emphasized negative on the bottom of the movement. As you guys will see in all these exercises, there's a peak contraction with an emphasis on negative. So at the end, we went to standing barbell curl, and we used the easy bar. And I got to tell you, by the end, it doesn't take a lot of weight to feel very heavy. I think these guys did maybe 95, 100 pounds, and it felt like murder to them. Because again, what we did to the exercises leading up to that movement. So by the time we got to the standing barbell curl, that was it. It was a wrap. Okay, so for standing barbell curls, basically it's a shoulder width grip on the cambered bar. Okay, and the idea is we're trying to keep their arms glued to the sides, and we're trying to avoid a swing. Okay, now as we get heavier, a little bit of English is okay, but not a huge swing. So third exercise, same principle, peak contraction and emphasize the negative on the way down. We keep the pace and the tempo with all these exercises the same. That's the key. It's okay. That's a warning.
That's failure.
That's failure.
That's fucking failure. That's it. This was fast as it came up. It was like,
yeah, that's it.
go back down. I'm like, shit. It's that whole negative thing is killing me. Gosh.
As far as weight selection, you can get an idea pretty quickly of what someone's using. And again, we want to use, the idea is that it's progressive weight resistance. So we do want to use weight that's going to be challenging, but never at the expense of compromising the form. With Keith and Mike, it's great because there's no ego situation with the weight selection. They're not trying to outdo each other with weights, as we've seen a lot of people. And then again, exercise form is compromised. So the idea is we're trying to select the heaviest weights possible because this is progressive weight resistance, but again, never at the expense of compromising the integrity of the form of the exercise.
I wouldn't mind working on my triceps a little more, thickening my triceps up. You look at guys in pro ranks at 212, that's what I always try to compare myself to aspire to be like. And like Flex Lewis, for instance, if you look at how thick his triceps are, I mean, they're huge. Him, David Henry, any of those guys, they got phenomenal triceps on them, large lateral heads and that sort of thing. And so I've been working on it a lot, trying to bring those up a little bit more to match. My biceps are there, but the triceps I'd really like to bring up and put them on par with those guys.
We did hammer curls for brachialis. The brachialis located here in between the tricep and the bicep.
Hello?
A lot of people, they don't get enough brachialis work in their arms. Keep in mind, brachialis is 1/3 of the arm development. So there's nothing for brachialis work than hammer curls. And the idea with the hammer curl is to really lock it into place for a second and then come down. And then lock it into place for a second and then come down. A lot of guys make the mistake of swinging their hammer curls, and they're not getting anything done there. We really need to emphasize the peak contraction for hammer curls when we're involving the brachialis. So it actually has to literally be up there for like a 1/1000 and then a release.
The weather must be really bad in Minnesota, because that was the school district calling me saying that all the schools after school activities are closed.
The importance with the hammer curls is not to shrug the shoulder up. A lot of guys, when they raise the dumbbell, they tend to raise their shoulder along with it. We have to remove the shoulders involved in this movement, period. So if anything, there has to be a slight tilt to avoid the shoulder from raising up. So there's basically two different ways of doing the hammers. We can go straight up and down this way, or we can go across the torso this way. And this is how I had these guys do this today. So again, the top of the movement, there's a peak contraction and then a resistance on the way down. And then there's a peak contraction on the top and then a resistance on the way down. So at the end of this, they were done, that's it. We do 3 compound exercises for biceps and 1 compound exercise for brachialis.
My arm workouts, my arms are anywhere between 21 and 22 inches now, but we're just trying to put more dense muscle on my body, and that's what we've accomplished over the last year and a half. It's more dense muscle, but people think I'm actually getting heavier when I'm getting lighter when I'm going into the New York Pro. And I'm trying to change my trainer thinking of every time I'm losing weight, I'm thinking I'm getting smaller. But what Charles and Dave tell me is, no, your muscle's getting dense, so it's making you look bigger. And so we're just trying to keep that dense muscle on there and hold on to the mass and not lose what I got, because, a lot of people you know, look good 3-4 weeks out from a show, and then they get to the show and they flatten out or they don't look the same. And we're just trying to hold on to that mass and be able to, like Charles told me, oh, this sucks.